Hey folks, welcome. Here we discuss real stories by real people. Today we have the story of a man who catches his wife having sex with a man in their home. Let's see how it goes. Story 1. About a year ago, I, 35 male, married my spouse 32 after about 1.5 years of dating. I know most people consider that to be a short time dating before marriage, but we've known each other since college. In fact, we dated for the first time while we were both enrolled at the same college. Now, she was a stunning and fantastic woman back then and still was when I married her. We only broke up in college because I decided to drop out and pick up my father's construction business, which had been in the family for generations. Regardless of that, we were happily married, at least I thought we were, until very recently. While our marriage was mostly flawless, oftentimes my wife would complain about our monetary situation. My job could only pay so much, being the smaller company that it was. And my wife ran an Etsy shop that was mostly a failure. Her job only brought in about as much money as a mildly successful side hustle. In reality, she would spend most of her days around the house where she would read, clean, or watch TV. Despite this fact, we were not doing terribly for ourselves, and I was perfectly okay with our finances. Unfortunately, she was not. I woke up on a rainy day feeling generally awful. The common headache, stuffy nose, and achy body had combined in a perfect storm that was not soothed by the usual cup of coffee. I went to work anyway, cursing the dreary weather for my completely unrelated illness. By the time I got to the site, the dreary weather had turned into a small downpour, which developed into a sizable rainstorm in only a few hours. Normally, I would have stayed on site to do paperwork and management, since off-site hours were a pain in the neck to record. However, I just decided to call it a day and head home, since I already felt under the weather, literally and figuratively. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street in front of our house. It still haunts me that instead of being suspicious immediately, I simply assumed it was a friend of hers and walked into the house like nothing was wrong. It was only when I found no one in the living room or kitchen that I realized what was happening. The only other rooms in the house were bedrooms, so I walked calmly but a bit shakily up to the door of our bedroom and swung it open. My wife was laying in bed completely naked, draped over the body of another man who I'd never seen before. As the door slammed against the wall, both of them shot up in a panic. My wife's face contorted with shock while the guy's face was pure embarrassment. I looked directly at him and forcefully told him to leave immediately. I must have intimidated him because the poor guy didn't even put his clothes back on before rushing out the front door. He simply ran to his car in his underpants, in the rain. This is funny to me now, but at the moment, I couldn't care less. I waited patiently for my wife to clothe herself before asking who the guy was. Turns out she had met him on an online dating app, which made it hurt even more. She told me that this was the first time she had cheated on me, but I didn't believe her, and still don't. I started to break down a little and began to ask her why she had cheated, but she wouldn't give me a good answer. Finally, I just told her to leave. That's when she freaked out. Somehow, she'd thought that her life with me would remain intact even after she got caught. She began to raise her voice, telling me how tired she was of having no money, how a woman like her needed to be taken to fancy restaurants and treated to things we couldn't afford. I got angry, began to yell, berating her for being lazy, for being a failure for just about everything I could think of. We yelled at each other, not even listening to what we were saying. Sure, I said some things I shouldn't have, but she definitely deserved it. After our screaming match fizzled, she grabbed her important things and left. I found out later that she stayed at her mom's house almost an hour away. We didn't talk for days, in which I numbly worked and slept, not really doing much else. Finally, 4 days later, she called me. I hesitated to pick up the phone, but I couldn't resist. She was crying on the other line, complaining about how her mom was making her pay rent and get a job. She begged me to let her stay at my house again. She claimed that I wouldn't even notice her. It blew my mind that she ever thought I might say yes, but her desperation made me smile. I simply said no, hung up, and blocked her number. The next day, I went to work feeling like a human again, and I've been picking up the pieces ever since. I even sent her the divorce papers this past weekend. I'm glad your marriage ended, OP. Being married to a person like your wife who always wants more and more but never wants to work for the more sounds torturous. She didn't appreciate all your hard work, and the fact that she still expected you to allow her to stay in your house even after you caught her cheating on you is insane. Put every memory of her far back behind you and move on with your life. Story 2. I'm 25 male and my wife 22 of a little over 2 years has cheated on me twice since we've been married. We've never really had any problems in our relationship, except this. The first instance was around Thanksgiving 2011. It was during a month apart where she moved first and I was going to follow shortly a month after. She ended up going to the bar with some friends and ended up taking a guy back to the apartment so he didn't have to get a cab back, and she would just drive him in the morning. It ended up with them back at the apartment drinking more, and as far as the details my wife told me about it, she was pretty much wasted and blacked out. And she woke up in the middle of intercourse, and she told him to stop, and he did. The second incident was last night. She had a friend over and we were watching some TV, playing some video games, and she and her friend were drinking. Even on the weekends, I tend to go to bed at a respectable hour, so when I got tired, I did. Around 3:45 a.m., I woke up and I creeped out of the bedroom and I saw him on top of her in the middle of sex on the couch. I'm not sure what to do and wasn't spotted, so I go back into the bedroom and grab my phone. I walk back toward the bedroom door and my wife catches me. I end up being really depressed, and before I get into some trouble for kicking the other guy's ass, he ends up leaving. She comes into the room later with a knife and says she's going to kill herself. I obviously took it from her, and we talked about it. 4 hours later, I'm sitting here typing this on Reddit. My wife says she still loves me, and I believe her to an extent. I'm in need of some help, because if I leave her, I think she'll end up doing something crazy like killing herself, and there's no way I can deal with that. Should I just end the marriage, Reddit? What if she does kill herself if I leave her? Should I feel guilty for that? What can I do? Update. Yes, it was just about a year ago that I caught them, so this is a very old thread and I'm not sure if anyone here actually remembers it. I followed a lot of advice in my old thread. Now, on to the details. We got divorced 6 months later. Yes, I waited entirely too long. Went back to my hometown for my grandma's funeral in July, came back and immediately filed for divorce. Thank goodness we had no kids. About a month or two after the divorce was finalized, I started going to see someone about depression from the whole thing. As of now, I'm still going to therapy because it has been and still is rough on me. I'm working through it little by little, and it's working out for the most part. I've seen her in person about 3 times since we got divorced. All times that I keep finding her shit still around my apartment because she actually didn't look at anything she took. The last time I saw her was yesterday. I was going to her apartment, in a different city thankfully, to drop off a box with the rest of her stuff, when I figured she'd still be at work. Well, she wasn't. She was sitting outside with the guy she cheated on me with. But the best part is, he ran into the apartment when I got there, so I've at least got that going for me. Anyhow, that's about all I have for now. I know it was a boring update, but I figured I would thank those who helped me. It's a good thing you ended your marriage, OP. Your ex-wife is a liar and a cheat. Maybe even a chronic cheater who had sex with another man while you were in the next room sleeping. If you hadn't walked in on them that night, they would have finished what they were doing, and your wife would have kissed you the next morning like nothing happened. She obviously didn't love or respect you, and you clearly deserve better, so I'm glad you're going for it. If you see any of her stuff in your house again, burn it. Say good riddance to her, never to see or meet her again. Take care, OP. Now for some comments. Your wife cheated on you twice, once with a stranger and another time with a friend while you were in the house. Now you're afraid to leave her because she threatens to kill herself. You need to leave this relationship, and she needs professional help. Talk to her family for support. You shouldn't feel obligated to stay in a relationship like this because she's willing to emotionally blackmail you. I'm glad you're better off now. Here's my suggestion for the future. If you date a girl who makes a drunken mistake, alcohol should be taken off the table for her indefinitely. If you can't handle yourself in certain situations, you shouldn't be in those situations. Hindsight is 20/20 though. It's good you were able to get out, and definitely keep up with the therapy. Good job handling the situation too. You dodged a bullet, my friend. Imagine if there were children involved. Much more complicated. A certain percentage of the population are toxic, and you unfortunately married one of them. Not to sound cliched, today's the first day of your life. Go do some charity work with disabled or ill children. It will put things into context and will greatly enrich your life. You have to get off the beach and get into the fight.